Fearless.
Chase.
Bold.
Following.
Courageous.
Search. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Marshall.
And this is
Undaunted
Pursuit.
Slow. It has been so slow and poopy. And I even took it to Best Buy once, had them do some stuff to it. It didn't help at all. It was absolutely a waste of money. Don't ever go to them. They're worthless. With my experience, it was not beneficial at all. It was a waste of my cash. Anyway, yeah, so this thing's been super slow ever since. And I've had so many issues. Like on Friday nights, I use this computer for like all the videos and slideshows.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many times it like freezes up and doesn't work. And like people are coming in the door. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out at church. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So one of these days I'm going to buy a new computer. Kelsey has a nice Mac Airbook behind me. It's like brand new.
Well, I can't, I don't, mine's not very nice. We have one computer in the house. We share it.
Yeah.
So I use this computer for this. My wife uses this computer for her business. And,
yeah.
And so this thing, the battery is so bad on it. I've got to keep it plugged in. So when I move it, it shuts down and then I plug it back in. I got to restart it. You know, it's just a mess.
I hear you.
Golly. Yeah.
Technology.
Little technical difficulties starting this thing off, but is what it is. I'm yet in a new location, as you can see.
I can see that.
It looks like a studio, but it's actually you should see my setup. It's quite comical. So Ashley didn't have to work today, so of course I had to sneak away into our bedroom because of course I still don't have a booster or anything out in the regulars. Yeah. So I'm in what did I call it earlier? I called it, I'm gonna go because Savannah, my little girl, for those of you listening, and she was waking up, and she's the youngest out of the 5, so she was waking up as I was getting home from work, and I was like, oh, I better sneak back into the bedroom layer before she realizes I'm home, or else it'll be nonstop knocking. Plus, this is the only door in the house out of the bedrooms that has locks. A lock. Yeah. so anyway, so I was like, yeah, I better sneak back there and get that done. You know,
yeah.
Get this podcast started. So here I am sitting. And I'm using 2 laundry hampers. One, I'm sitting on the floor. I'm using one laundry hamper as my table, and the other laundry hamper is holding my microphone. So
is that a doorstop?
That is a door,
right
there.
That's what I thought it was. I was like, is that a doorstop? That's awesome.
It's the best place that I could set up.
Yeah,
that would be just fine. So
it looks good though, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, you can't even tell. If I wouldn't have said anything, you wouldn't have even noticed.
I would have. We have no idea at all. So how has your week been?
Oh man, it's been crazy. Well, before we go into that, we'll start with last night. I started for you listeners. This is not going to make any sense because I'm way behind on editing podcasts. But anyway, I was editing our first podcast. I was about, I don't know. My goodness, I was 3 hours into it, and I was 3 hours into editing and only 13 minutes into the podcast.
Oh my gosh. Jeez.
So, and needless to say, there's a lot of work that goes into these things. I was just cleaning it up, making it sound better. Not that there was anything to really take out, but I was just getting into the funny part was I had to laugh because I was at one point in the podcast, I hear you snicker, and we just kept rolling like nothing happened. And then all I could think about, I wasn't watching the video, but all I could think about is one of the kids must have come in silently and had been sitting on my lap or doing something crazy like they always do. Mm-hmm. But I kept that little snicker in there because I thought it was funny because you kind of laugh and we just keep on rolling, keep on trucking. So it's coming together nicely and I'm excited. I'm excited to get it done. So hopefully episode 1 should be dropping sometime soon, but I guess that doesn't really matter. So cut that out because it doesn't matter in this episode since this is episode 3.
Yay!
Episode 3. We made it to episode 3. So
episode 3, man. We're just trucking right along.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Undaunted Pursuit podcast with Aaron and Marshall. Glad to have you guys here, and we're just going to be winging it today. So yeah, I don't know. The week's been going good. Actually, no, it really hasn't. Last few days have been a lot better than the beginning of the week because, well, it's springtime here, and the weather can't make up its mind. It doesn't feel like springtime. Well, heck, it snowed the other day. It'll snow at night, and then it'll all melt off. So,
jeez.
But
weather is just as bad as Texas weather.
I know it. It's been crazy because I've been thinking I have all kinds of, we're winging it today. We didn't really come up with a topic. So I've had all these thoughts running through my head on what to talk about. And there's so much to talk about, but it's back up to a couple. It'd be like the Sunday, probably Sunday before last. So, okay. Well, this will be a funny story. Sunday before last. It's communion. We do communion every week. I don't know how you guys do it.
Once a month.
So we do communion every week. Well, I had to give the pastors a hard time because everybody in the church, the wine, not the wine, I say the wine, but the grape juice.
Hey, if your church is passing out wine, I'm in the wrong church.
Right. No, the grape juice, it was starting to turn. It was, I made the joke about it. I was like, I guess this stuff's starting to ferment. But no, it was more like this stuff was starting to sour. And as I was joking with the pastors about how it's like, well, why did church get canceled next week? Because everybody got sick off of the communion juice, But so that being said, it was Easter last Sunday. We had a potluck. It was real nice. It was a beautiful 40-degree morning, Easter egg hunting. Actually, Saturday before that, we actually Easter egg hunted in the snow while it was actively snowing. So that's a first for us.
That's a memory.
But no, we had a potluck, and then came home and did started doing some work, and I've been building this table. I just started feeling sick. We ended up catching the flu. But leading up to that, I almost thought I disemboweled myself with the Sawzall. I was cutting up. Yeah, I was cutting up a pallet. And this is a story I didn't tell you the other day, but I was cutting up a pallet, and with the Sawzall, I was kind of cutting towards me, and it came through and hit me right in the stomach. And I was like, oh, but after that, I just started getting sick. I was like, no way did that hurt that bad that I started getting sick from hitting myself with the point on this Sawzall. Wow. But no, I didn't. It barely cut me, but it hurt pretty good. So anyway, we ended up catching the flu. So the first part of the week, we were out with the flu and pukey and nasty. I slept all day Monday, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, after that whole incident about almost cutting my stomach open, there's something going on outside. Anyway. After almost cutting my stomach open with the Sawzall, which didn't happen, but I'm cutting it again. And what does Savannah do? Stick her fingers right up there. By the grace of God, I didn't cut her fingers off.
Oh my goodness.
It stopped just in time because her fingers were right by the blade. I was like, oh my gosh, we better just pack it up for the evening.
My goodness. Sounds like an eventful evening for you guys.
Yeah. So I mean, how was your week?
Let's see. Today's Thursday. It's
past 2 weeks. It's been a second since we didn't do one last week because we got lazy. But
yeah, we got lazy. Yes, man. Let's see. I guess I can go back a week. Not much going on. My wife and I. Oh, actually, interesting story. So my wife and I went to Arlington, Texas last week, which for us is a couple-hour drive. We went there to drop off my truck at a friend of ours. He's a mechanic. He owns his own shop. And so we dropped it off there for him to work on it. Because at this point, I've spent $5,000 on my truck trying to get this thing working properly. It is yet to work properly. So I'm hoping he can figure this out. So after that, we ran some other errands, dropped her ring off to get it cleaned and inspected and all that good stuff. And then we went to this mall in Arlington. And so we're just shopping around. We haven't been in a mall in years. And this mall is packed. I thought malls were a thing of the past and people really didn't go to them anymore because the small mall we have up here where we live, it's dead. It's like a ghost town. You see a handful of people there, on the weekends, but it's just dead.
Yeah.
And so I thought, malls were, well, this mall, my goodness, there were
Yeah.
thousands of people.
I remember going there in high school, when that used to be the thing. It's like, oh
Yeah.
man, let's just go. Anytime you had a chance to go to a mall, band trip,
Yeah.
youth group thing. It was big with the youth group, It was that, yeah. Man, I haven't been to a mall. Where do I have a mall? Where do we have a mall here in Idaho? I don't even know. So it's been a while for me, but yeah. How many high schoolers did you see there?
Oh my goodness. So yeah, so while we're at the mall, there's just tons of kids. Hundreds, thousands of kids everywhere. That's the majority of the people you saw were just kids.
Huh,
I mean,
so
there
it
were
is still a
adults there,
thing.
obviously. Oh, it's still a thing, especially in the Metroplex where there's a lot of people. And what's funny is a lot of these, 80s and 90s styles are starting to slowly come back into style. I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to see kids at the gym with, I don't know about you, but when I was in middle school, we would bleach our hair blonde, just the top part of your, not your whole head, like on the sides and back of your head, but just
Oh
the
yeah.
top.
Well, man,
Well,
we could go into that. I mean,
oh
I
man,
had that little later on. I had the bowl
yeah,
cut first,
I had the
and
bowl
then
cut.
and then the bleached tips or
Yeah,
whatever. That was the cool thing.
bleach
Spiked hair,
tips.
bleached tips,
Oh yeah.
puka shell
So
necklace.
yeah. So there's a lot of that. And so anyway, to go back to the story there at the mall. So while we're at the mall, we're walking around shopping, minding our own business, just doing our own thing. And we'd kind of go to a couple different stores and you have to walk all over the place, just get to one store. It's so huge. We start hearing rumors of fights breaking out all over the mall.
Mm-hmm.
You start hearing of different stores closing down the mall. And as we're walking around, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing stores closed. And it's probably like around 6:30 in the evening. So, it's still fairly early for the mall to be closing down, I would think, on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so you start seeing all these metal doors closing and stuff for these stores. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. So then we're walking, trying to walk back to leave the mall. And I talked to this guy and this girl, and I'm like, what's this I'm hearing about? Yeah, fights breaking out in the mall. And he said, yeah, there are rumors going, there's fights breaking out everywhere, and stores are closing down, and people are trying to get out here freaking out. And he's like, I ain't sitting around and waiting, because there's people like standing around looking and just staring over the balconies, looking for fights and stuff to break out. I'm like, what are y'all waiting on? I'm carrying my 40 caliber Ruger pistol on my hip.
Yeah.
To having them all concealed. And I'm like, I'm waiting for something bad to happen. And anyway, so we walked to the food court to get back to our exit to get out of the mall. And there are just hundreds of kids. And it's like sardines. And I got my wife's hand kind of pulling her through this crowd of kids smoking their vapes and blowing it in your face. I'm just like,
Right inside the mall?
Right inside the mall. Like, they don't care. And just having to like, get your way through this maze of kids, and they don't move out of your way. They have like, it's like almost like you're not even there.
Right.
And anyway, it was insane. And so then you start hearing kids going pow 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 pow, like people have guns. I'm like, oh geez. I'm like, get me out of this place before something bad happens.
Oh,
all I could think about was, man, we're gonna be on the news tonight.
Yeah.
What about a shooting or something?
What was it? Were there actual people shooting or what?
No, there was nobody shooting. I never saw any fights myself. I kept hearing about it when we got outside the mall finally and walking to our car. There was some people who worked there who were leaving, and some older guy pulled up in a car, and he gets out and he asked the people that were leaving the mall, "Hey, is there really a fight that's going on?" I guess it was spreading outside the mall too. And they were saying, yeah, there's supposedly fights going on. And so he gets back in his car and leaves. So we never saw anything. We just heard a lot of stuff. People were leaving because they were like, I'm not hanging out to find out.
Yeah, no kidding.
We definitely were. I'm not gonna sit there and just chill. Yes, it was pretty crazy.
The amount of
that weekend.
The amount of discontent and hate in this world today is amazing. Not amazing in a good way. It's just, it's baffling is what it is.
Yep.
That kind of brings me to a verse I've come to love because, well, thanks to the Unashamed podcast that I listen to on a regular basis, but it comes out of First Thessalonians 4 verse 11, and make it your ambition to live quietly and peacefully and to mind your own affairs and work with your hands just as we directed you.
Yeah.
That even goes with the couple of things that have happened, not necessarily terrible in our lives, but and it happens on a daily basis. People just mind mind your own business, live a quiet life,
Yeah.
But sorry I interrupted. Go on. What?
No, you're good. But other than that, I mean, this week it's been a good week. Work has been good. It's been busy at work, which is a good thing. It's just been one thing after another, which is great. Still learning a ton with this new job and our new position at the same company. But man, it's been a good week overall, honestly.
Oh, good.
I'm doing a lot of work around the house. Doing some landscaping, and I was up to about 9:30 last night. I mean, I was up later than that, but
hold that thought for a second. You're fixing this house up because you want to sell it, right?
We're trying to sell it.
Why not? Well, I mean, if we can get this thing out there, this is a perfect plug right here. If you want to move to Texas, maybe you shouldn't give your address. Not quite yet. I didn't think that one through.
They have some people we may not want to show up to the property.
Somewhere in Texas, there is a house that is up for sale right now, owned by Marshall.
Yeah. Good luck finding it. So we're doing that. Same. I was up to about, I was up later than 9:30 last night, but it was around 9:30, and I was in the bathroom. I cleaned it first, and then one thing leads to another, and I see I'm working on going around caulking a lot of different things, prepping for paint on certain areas, and so there's caulking along the bottom of the floor and where the flooring and the tub meet, and I'm digging all this old caulking out of there because it just looks bad, faded, and I'm like, it's in there, it's like wedged in there, and I'm having a heck of a time. I probably spent 30 minutes, 45 minutes getting this caulking out of there. Finally get it out, and I caulked that and a bunch of other stuff in there, and still not finished. But so, we're just doing stuff like that, odds and ends, just sink faucets, light fixtures. We're going to start ordering those things. We have to get a new stove and a new dishwasher because they decided to break on us, and just trying to get things pretty
nice,
ready to throw it on the market. And then we'll move on to another Texas town sometime this summer. So that's keeping us busy.
Well, good deal. Yeah. No, at least you're finally doing something with doing something on your own. I'm proud of you, Marshall.
Thanks, Aaron.
I mean, coming from a guy who's got a lot of hobbies, a little blessing is here I am trying to get this stinking entryway table done. I said, I'm done. I'd gotten sick. We were close to being done. And I was like, I'm done with this table. I'm ready to be done with it. It's taken me long enough to build it. And what is it? We did a good enough job on it that now we have another order for another entryway table. So
nice.
So nice. Little blessing, but it's definitely. When do I have time for that? Though yeah. You said your work's been pretty busy. Mine's been pretty slow. I managed to milk a building this, I don't know, this contraption to hold some oil pump, like an oil and a hydraulic pump stuff, so that we can take it and pump out oil, motor oil and hydraulic fluid. So I managed to milk this project for like a week. Slow enough.
Jeez.
I finally got it done. It may weigh 200 pounds, but I finally got it done. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, but there's plenty of projects around here, and I try to do as much of that stuff as I can. I wasn't replace our toilets myself. I bought them a couple years ago, and I had full intentions of replacing them. I go and I remove one of them. I get it out of there. I've done it before, and I get the wax ring. I'm set. I'm good. Well, whoever built the plumbing in this house for the toilet, instead of coming, straight up, they did like a 90 kind of a deal, or like an elbow instead of like a 90 kind of, and it's supposed to come straight up, but it kind of elbows up. And so because of that, I couldn't just willy-nilly just change out like you normally would and set the toilet down normally. So I ended up bringing somebody out, and they had to like bolt this plastic piece into the concrete, drill into the concrete, and then set the wax ring on top of that and then the toilet. So
we've had to do that before.
Yeah. So we got one more to do. That one's been there for, I don't know, maybe 2 years. Our guest bathroom, our other one we haven't, it's still in the garage.
Well, I was replacing a toilet once. It's almost like the pipe was just floating there, and
Oh,
it was
really?
like the floor was the only thing kind of holding it in position. There was a gap between it. So when we pulled this toilet up, it's kind of hard to explain, but the ring, it'd be the spacer or whatever that holds the toilet bolts, wasn't straight. So the toilet never sat straight because one side would dip down or whatever. And it never, I couldn't even begin to know where we would have gone about fixing it, but we ended up making it work. So
yeah, that's what you gotta do sometimes.
Yeah. I was talking the other day in our small group, one of the guys, we were talking about fishing. Well, let me back up and say this. Hold on. What are you doing?
Dog poop on the floor.
Oh, no.
You gotta leave that in there.
Oh, no. I am always on poop patrol.
It's like Paw Patrol, but poop patrol.
It's poop patrol.
Oh man, now I had to get set again. Well, you can't hear, so now I'm just talking to myself. So
I can hear Marshall.
What?
I can hear Marshall.
You can hear Marshall. How can you hear Marshall? I have headphones on.
He's the one that said you have to leave that in there.
How do you hear him?
I can hear it through your headphones.
Because I'm deaf. And I need my headphones up so loud. It's surprising. It's surprising that it doesn't backfeed through the microphone then.
You're getting that old fart hearing.
Yeah. well, my lovely wife just walked in. Welcome to the Undaunted Pursuit, Ashley. Say thank you louder. Oh, this is getting.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. I'm not editing this out. It's not happening. Oh no. Oh
Sure
no.
What?
The girl has found us. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about the little one. Oh, hey, don't knock over my clothes hamper. That's holding my microphone.
What's up, Munchkin?
Welcome to the Undaunted Pursuit, little baby girl. Hey, you wanted to talk to Marshall the other day. Can you say hi? You see him? You were telling him all about your black horsey, weren't you? Yeah. Love you. I'm talking with Mr. Marshall. And then everybody else in the world will get to hear this.
The whole world.
Sure.
No, I won't. Okay, hold on. I got to adjust this microphone now. I don't know that I really need it that close. Because when I went to editing the other day, I noticed, since you really don't have a microphone yet.
Not yet.
I am quite a bit louder when I speak because it picks it up.
Yeah.
Just his way to put you down there, Marshall.
That's right.
Yeah, I appreciate
You're always
that.
below me.
Just wait until I go buy my Shure microphone. All right.
Okay. So anyway, where were we? We were at, we were at small group. Well, man, I messed it up again. Okay. No. So I listen to a lot of podcasts and sometimes I get to thinking the one thing that I do miss about living in the South and in the Midwest is I really miss the fishing.
Yeah.
I really miss the fishing. I miss bass fishing, which the cool thing about out here in Idaho is I can still do some smallmouth fishing and there is no limit on smallmouth because they're an invasive species out here. So they're not native, but there's a ton of them and it is great fishing. But anyway, so we got talking about fly fishing with this guy in our small group. And I was like, yeah, I need to get out and do more of that. Okay. Love you, baby girl. Love you, mommy. Anyway, so we got to talking about fly fishing. That I love fly fishing. We got talking. Preferably, we were talking about steelhead fishing, which is basically a large rainbow trout. It's they're kind of a trophy fish. They are a trophy fish around here. They're huge. They can get up. I think anything over. If I tell you a measurement, it'll be wrong because the whole reason for going into this rant would be because most of the time I'm now focused on taking the kids fishing and I don't get to do much fishing myself because one thing leads to another. It's like, Daddy, can you fix my reel? Daddy, can you pull my lure out of the tree? And but they were talking about Steelhead and how good of a season it was and is. I wouldn't know because I haven't yet to have a chance to go and do it. I said, yeah, no, I haven't actually. I actually haven't caught a steelhead. I would love to. They're like, oh, you haven't been out? It's like, have you been out? It's like, no. They're like, well, that's why you haven't caught a steelhead. Yeah, that's a good point.
That'll cause that to happen.
Completely off topic, but I thought that was a kind of a funny story to add in. Well,
No, it makes me remember the days when you and Nathan went and did some fishing. Where was that? Was it in Arkansas or was that Southern Missouri?
Was that
we went camping? It was me, you, and Nathan went one time, and then there's another time when
yep. Not Nathan the preacher, Nathan our buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was always fun. Fly fishing down
fun.
there in Southern Missouri. Yeah. Heck yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Well, and then we used to do a lot of fishing together.
We did.
I still got pictures of us. It was there was one I saw the other day of you holding up I was looking for another picture, and it was you holding up a trout, and a rainbow trout. Yeah. Nice. But it was just a cold, nasty, rainy day, which is what we did, though. I mean, I fished in all kinds of weather. Weather never stopped me from fishing.
Yeah.
So do you remember? This would be a good time to kind of segue into our next thing. So you remember last episode where we were talking about how our friend, how we've never really fought.
Yeah.
Even though, and like our friendship, like we are completely different people, and how we became friends is truly, it's an act of God. I mean, we are such good friends, and like I have only, you and my buddy Jeremiah are pretty much the only two people that I maintain contact with from my young. I mean, you are the longest of the one. I've maintained contact. I think you're the only one out of my high school that I've maintained contact with. But
yeah.
So anyway, that being said, and going all the way back to high school is, despite us not ever getting mad at each other, I can't think of an instance. So I'm going to say that we've never really gotten mad at each other.
No.
Even though we dated the same girl. You remember her? I thought about that. That a couple of days after the last podcast, and I was like, well, wait a second. I never got mad at him, even after because I dated her before you did.
It was long before. It was long before.
Was it long?
It was. I'm pretty sure. I never. That sounds so bad. Oh man, yeah.
I mean, it's childish now to think of it because
it is. But even then I didn't think twice about it. Like I never thought, oh, Aaron dated her. I should probably ask if he's okay with it. I just didn't. Never crossed my mind. And it's probably because it was so long after y'all did it. Because I think y'all dated. I want to say was it during high school or was it after high school?
Boy, it was
so long ago.
It was a long time ago, and I was a hound. So yeah, that didn't last it didn't go very long.
Well, it didn't for us either. So there's something to be said there, but it didn't last very long.
Yeah, we weren't together for very long, I don't believe.
She was a great person, really, but it just didn't work out,
Yeah.
So whatever.
Yeah. Nobody's going to know who she is because we're not going to say her name.
I'm not going to say names. If she ever listens to this, she'll know, obviously.
She will know. I doubt that. I don't even know where she is. I don't keep up with everybody anyway. So
yeah.
Well, let's get into a little bit of stuff before we decide to call it a night. I was just looking at my notes, and I'll tell you, it's funny because I'll be driving. I'll be driving along. I'll be thinking of stuff. I'll pull over. I'll jot down notes like, oh, cover this in the podcast. It's not like this is scripted or anything, guys. It's that I'll pull over and think of something and jot something down on whatever piece of paper I have in the truck with me at the time, or I'll be getting ready to go to bed and I'll write something down on a sheet of paper or whatever. And I just had something that would have been great to say during one of our last bits, but it's not a big deal. We're moving on. So I thought a topic for today that we're finally getting into closer to the end of the episode. This is going to be a short one, guys. Sorry, but we're just winging it. You get to hear us chat, and we'd probably be talking about this on the phone if we were just talking.
Pretty much. This is how our phone conversations go.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
But I did want to cover a little topic, and I wanted to cover, we talk about going to church, we talk about our small groups and everything like that. And I wanted to cover, what is the church? Something simple, something that we can dive into real quick and just do it. And I think it's a perfect time being that this is such a new podcast, is to just get this out of the way, not necessarily out of the way, but just to cover this early on, because growing up, I didn't hear a lot of this. I grew up in the church. I'm going to say that, and then we're going to define the church. But I grew up in the church, and I never heard it put this way until I got into adulthood and started visiting other churches. And I'm sorry I didn't fill you in on this, Marshall.
Oh, you're good.
I want to talk about the church being the body of Christ, the people. You know exactly where I'm going. It's become, it seems like it has become more, I don't want to say mainstream, but more popular now, because it's mentioned in every church, where it never was mentioned in the church I grew up in. You know what I mean? Or nothing that sticks with me like it does now.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about what the Bible says about what the church is, how we are to be the church. Yeah. And then I do want to kind of dive into a little bit of something that it had been probably beginning of the year. So I had gotten to thinking about, how you've heard growing up that Israel are God's chosen people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we are Israel, Gentiles and Jews alike. So, I always got to thinking, I was like, well, how, if God loves everybody and does not show favoritism,
mm-hmm.
or how are the Jews, there we go, not Israel, but the Jews, God's chosen people? Well, when we accept Jesus and what he did on the cross and his resurrection and become saved, we become Jews. We become his chosen people. Do you have anything to add on that?
I've never heard that. Honestly, I've never heard it put that way. I mean, I've heard, how we as individuals are the church. The people are the church body. It's not the building, it's the church. It's us as the church. And I didn't hear that until, kind of like you, later on in life. I mean, I wasn't necessarily raised in the church, so to speak. I became a Christian at 13 years old. I was going to church prior to that, and even younger, occasionally we would pop up here and there in a church, but it wasn't until I was 13 years old so I really started getting plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like you until later on down the road, in my, early adulthood, that I heard of we as people being the body of Christ, being the church, not the actual church building. But what you were just saying about Jews and all that kind of stuff, I'd never heard it put that way before, which is very interesting.
Well, that's kind of kind of original to, I try and read the Bible every day. And several months ago in my reading, I had that thought. I was like, and then, I have heard it on a couple of podcasts. I was like, you know what? Because I've not necessarily struggled with it, but I've had that thought several times in growing up in my faith. How, if God doesn't show favoritism, how are the Jews his chosen people? You know, and it occurred to me through the reading, and I'm sure any of you that dive deep, that do a deep dive and actually get into the word and study it, there are verses to back up my thoughts. And part of it is just kind of what I have interpreted, that we are, because we are all God's chosen people. We are, once you are kind of cut into that. That's why in a lot of Paul's writing, he talks about why he'll reference the, Jews first and the Gentiles. And you in all of Paul's letters, he does reference that we are all brothers and sisters in Christ, and we are all
right.
We could really go down a rabbit hole there, because now we're talking about the kingdom and how if we are the church, the body, the people, not the building. The building has nothing to do with it. If we are the church, we are the kingdom, because Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or can you, I don't know, help me make sense out of it?
I don't know if I can help you make sense out of it, but to me, it does make sense.
Right. So there was we kind of zigzagged a little bit there because it really had nothing to do that the Jews being the chosen people and the church really didn't have a lot to do in common. But I do have a couple of Bible verses here, that one out of Romans 12, verse 4-5, pertaining to the church being the people. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. So I guess if you were to interpret that in a way that it does kind of follow what I was talking about on both topics.
Mhm.
If you broke that down, each member belongs to all the others. That belongs, that kind of coincides with us being God's chosen people and the church as a whole,
Right.
instead of the building.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And it does make sense.
Another one that I really liked would be 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 9. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. And let me look that up. And that would have been coming. Let me look that up in my study Bible here. Take me long. 1 Corinthians 3, verse 9. Let's look that up because I'm using two different translations here. So in the Amplified version, it says, for we are God's fellow workers, his servants working together. You are God's cultivated field, his garden, his vineyard, God's building.
I want to look it up in the NIV just to see what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Give me a second. It's a little bit further back. What was the verse again?
It was 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 9.
3:9. Let's see. Yeah, in the NIV version that I have, it says, I think that's the version I have. Let me double check myself. Yeah, it's the Life Application Study Bible, New International Version. It says, for we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. So essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
And worded pretty similar too.
So the point to hammer home and to kind of put out there for everybody listening would be that it doesn't matter. Going to church is a very good thing. And I would venture to say that both Marshall and I would say that you should go to church.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't define your salvation.
Uh-uh.
But the reason for the church building would be so that we could gather with like-minded people, because you want to, and I found it myself that putting myself around Christian people helps you in your walk, in your walk in faith. So the reason behind that would be, so you can worship God as you are now, listening to our podcast, driving down the road, sitting in the bathtub, or just working around your house. Whatever you're doing, you can worship God in your own way there. But that's because we are all the church.
Yeah.
The church, going to church and fellowshipping with the fellow believers, I would say that we would encourage that as well.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think that fellowship of being in a church, it helps hold you accountable. It's a place where you can pray with other like-minded individuals about whatever you're going through in life. You can be there, support each other, encourage each other. Or if you're going through something, it's a place, to to admit your faults and sins to each other and pray about it, which is something God has called us to do anyway. And the church building is a good place. It's also a good place to really get plugged in and get involved and serve. It helps you get not just, to physically serve, in your community and in your church and help other people and stuff. It's a good venue to be able to do that. So yeah, we definitely encourage, to get involved in a church building family. If you don't have one, find one. But it's not just about that, like you're understanding, it is about us being the body of Christ as individuals, as Christians, and
yeah,
going that route. Yeah.
Well put. Well, I think we're gonna start to close this up. I want to thank you guys for listening and for joining us. I think we're going to cover next week's episode. Marshall, let's do fear.
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 Did Did I tell you? It's funny you mentioned that because last Friday, I don't think I've told you.
No.
Last Friday in our Celebrate Recovery group, we watched a video of a guy that gave his testimony, and it was mostly about fear. And then afterwards, I got up and talked to people and told them to think about what kind of fears do you have in your life. And I told them how, you know, fear and worry are really similar, and they kind of go hand in hand, because when you have fear or you're worrying about things, you're really not trusting God, and you're really not having faith in God, because you're worrying about something or you're afraid of something, whether it's a mental, spiritual, you know, emotional, physical fear. You're, you know, if you have that fear, you're not truly trusting God. I don't think anyway. Yeah. And so I told the people, I said, you know, when you go off in your small groups, think about fears you have, talk about them and pray about them. And so we did. So it's interesting that you mentioned fear for next week.
Yeah, I think that's going to be our next episode. I've been thinking a lot about it. I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about on that. So next episode topic is fear. Oh, before we go, I do want to share something. God is already working. That my mom called me the other day. And
I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yes, I almost forgot. My mom called me the other day, and she had a guy walk in, and I guess Mom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a fellow co-worker of hers that had been in, and she had been telling him a sad story, and he came back in a little while later to get whatever he had left behind, and said, you know, you should listen to he wasn't sure who it was, but he knew that it was at least some relation to my mother. He said, you should listen to your son-in-law's, and she's like, my son. She's like, it wouldn't be my son-in-law, it'd be my son. You should listen to his podcast. She's like, how would he know about your podcast? I was like, yeah, because we haven't, at that point, we hadn't released any episodes yet. So
I hadn't told anybody about anything.
God is already working.
Mm-hmm. God is, from the sounds of it, kind of preparing the way, kind of preparing the hearts and minds of people for what he's doing in this little old podcast. Yeah. Which I think is an amazing thing.
Yeah. I just thought that was a cool story to share before.
That's really, really neat.
So, all right. Well, we'll cover it next time. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you follow us. Go onto our webpage, undauntedpursuit.podbean.com. Like, share it, follow it, subscribe to our channel, and eventually when you see that button pop up, we could really use some funding for this podcast to keep this going. We're in the process of getting a PayPal donation button set up to get it put on there. As soon as you see that pop up, love your donations. It would really help us out, help Marshall out, help me out. So where else can they find us?
They can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, and eventually other social media platforms. And, you know, I think eventually we'll be on YouTube. You know, once we get the video side of this thing down, we'll start posting this stuff on there, and that's later on down the road. But that way people can actually watch what we're saying, which I think is pretty neat. People can follow that way as well. So, but that's something down the road. But for now, it'll be the website that he had mentioned, and also Facebook and Instagram for now. We may go to other platforms, but we will keep you guys notified as that comes.
Cool. And we'll keep you for now. 7memoriesfromtheroad@gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, we'll keep you posted on getting another email set up for that. And let's think about anything else here. I think that about sums everything up. So like and rate us on wherever you listen to your podcast at. It helps the ratings, helps us grow our podcast. So thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
God bless. We're out.